The last line of Nephite defense is showing signs of collapsing under the unprecedented fury of the Lamanites. Moroni, whose plan up to this point seemed to be working perfectly, has to act quickly to save the situation. If he doesn't, this battle will be a failure, and the city of Manti will be in grave danger. First, to give some background, it's the 18th year of the reign of the judges, and in that time there have been 3 major conflicts between the Lamanites and the Nephites. Captain Moroni has already proved himself on the battlefield because now at age 25, he is chief captain, the highest rank in the Nephite military. He's a man who hates war but is very good at it. Lehi, who has likely been involved in most if not all of these previous battles, is a hardened veteran and will be Moroni's right-hand man in this and future conflicts. The Nephites hear about trouble brewing in the lands of the Zoramites and Lamanites, so they send Moroni off to deal with the situation. Introducing Zarahemna, a power-hungry warmonger that's gathered a Lamanite army. He finds willing allies in the Nephite-hating Amalekites and Zoramites. Having disaffected from Nephite society and religion, they make the perfect captains for his army, fueling a passionate hatred against the Nephites and a desire to bring them under bondage. Events involving the peaceful anti-Nephite Lehis have caused the Zoramites' anger to boil over, and Zarahemna with his army head off to invade and punish the land of Jershon, aiming to establish a kingdom of his own on the backs of the Nephites. Zarahemna and his men come upon Moroni's army and have a sobering realization. They are grossly unprepared for combat. The Nephites are decked out in breastplates, helmets, thick furs, and shields, while the Lamanites, inexplicably, are wearing literally nothing but loincloths. The Book of Mormon mentions the Lamanites having at least worn light armor in previous battles, so I'm puzzled by their lack of current preparation. As usual, I've got a lot of personal theories. Check out the video description if you really want to hear them. But whatever the reason, Zarahemna's force is looking less and less like an army and more like an armed mob. Despite their significant superiority in numbers, Zarahemna's men turn around back into the wilderness, intending to strike at a weaker area. Having found the enemy army, Moroni is not about to let it disappear. He sends out scouts to follow Zarahemna's path in the wilderness. He also sends a message to Alma, former chief judge and current leader of the church, asking him to inquire of the Lord where Zarahemna's men would invade next. After getting the revelation from God, Alma responds that Zarahemna is heading toward the land of Manti, a weaker area of the Nephite nation. Moroni quickly assembles his men and, prudently leaving behind a small defensive force, moves toward Manti. Not having to muddle through the difficult wilderness terrain I imagine Zarahemna is slogging through, Moroni makes great time. Then Moroni gathers volunteers from Manti to increase his army size, or, depending on how you read it, he forces volunteers from Manti to increase his army size, and sends out more scouts to monitor Zarahemna's progress. He eventually learns the exact path Zarahemna is taking and lays an ambush, splitting his forces into 3, 2 under his command and 1 under the direct command of Lehi. So now I question, where did Moroni place the local volunteers from Manti? There seem to be indications that the Nephites have maintained a professional army for at least 2 to 4 years by this point. If so, the volunteers from Manti lack the battle experience of the other professional soldiers. Moroni could have divided up the new volunteers among the veteran troops, or he could have kept them all together as their own unit. There are pros and cons to both. I'm choosing to think he put them all together on their own. It is not clear to me whether Moroni intends to keep this third group in reserve, as generals often do with less reliable troops, or if he intends to have them take an active role. You can decide for yourself as the battle plays out. The Lamanites come around the hill Riplah and start crossing the river Sidon. All of a sudden, they see a Nephite force behind them, cutting off their quickest route home. Lehi's men pose a serious threat. The Lamanites turn and engage. It quickly becomes very apparent how vulnerable the unclothed Lamanites are. Lehi's men deliver devastating blows, bringing death almost at every stroke, the Nephite armor making it a heavily one-sided fight. The Lamanites, not wanting their turn in the slaughter, flee across the river, Lehi's men pursuing until the riverbank. On the other side of the river, the Lamanites get hit by Moroni's force. More fighting ensues, I'm assuming just as unfavorable for the poorly equipped Lamanites. I'm puzzled why the third group did not attack as well, completely entrapping the Lamanites. Maybe a miscommunication or a deliberate choice by Moroni? You decide. The Lamanites soon break and flee toward the land of Manti, their original goal, but now their last chance of escape. And they run smack dab into this third Nephite force. The Lamanites are getting desperate now and start fighting like madmen. The Nephites have never seen the Lamanites fight with such strength and courage. They seem to fight like dragons, cleaving helmets in two and slamming their swords through chest armor. Okay, imagine being one of these Nephites. You see one of these crazed Lamanites leap up and smash through your buddy's helmet. And there is a whole mob of Lamanites behind that one, all with that same desperate madness in their eyes. All roaring and swinging at you now because killing you is their last hope of surviving this day. The better armored Nephites are freaked out by the insane desperation of these Lamanites, and the line starts to buckle. This battle is now critically close to backfiring for Moroni. Other generals in history have learned what Moroni is probably just internalizing. You push a surrounded enemy too hard and they start fighting desperately mad. And these Lamanites are definitely desperate and they are definitely mad. What's worse is the Lamanites are unleashing on what might be the least experienced soldiers in Moroni's army. If the Lamanites break through this last section of Nephites, there is no one between them and the helpless land of Manti. And who knows what kind of cruel revenge they would inflict on those innocent people before Moroni could get there. So Moroni has to act quickly to save the situation. By whatever means, he sends forth and inspires the Nephites to stand firm, reminding them of their lands, liberty, and freedom. If these are the new Manti recruits I theorize they are, the message is especially poignant, because it's literally their homes and families they are protecting. The Nephites turn upon the Lamanites, crying with one voice to God, and the record says they fight with power. The Lamanites are pushed back, deflate, and flee a third time, back toward the river. The Lamanites are now completely surrounded and know they can't cut their way out. Moroni calls off the attack, and the Lamanites turn to behold Moroni, awaiting his verdict. What follows is some of the greatest interchange in Scripture. We won't get into all the details, but suffice it to say, Moroni allows all that want to the chance to return home if they give up their weapons and make a covenant of peace. A good chunk of them agree and depart, but Zarahemna convinces the remainder to stay and keep fighting. The Nephites attack again until finally Zarahemna relents, and he and what's left of his army give up their weapons, make the covenant, and depart. Zarahemna's quest for power is a complete disaster. Now, in my opinion, Moroni has now solidified his name among some of the greatest tacticians in ancient military history. Notice how instead of 3 separate battles in the Amalekite rebellion, Moroni stops Zarahemna's invasion completely in just one battle. Watch part 2 to get into the nitty-gritty of how Moroni accomplished this. I'll also compare certain aspects of this conflict with other wars in history. Or skip ahead and watch the next videos to see how Moroni fares as a strategist in large-scale warfare. Thanks for watching.